Grab your hat and binoculars, gals and pals. We're going on another safari through the world of the forgotten, obscure, and overlooked Otome games. But this time we're taking a tour through the world of Japanese indie games on PC, and things get a little crazy on those streets. The first game on our expedition is one that's rather hard to recommend. It comes from indie developer Yatsunagi, the person behind Homicipher, and they put Magical Deathpair on the back burner, only releasing the first episode in English of what was probably intended to be a three-parter, while working on their language-learning monster romance adventure game. Homicipher blew up big time, becoming a game that weirdos on Tumblr and TikTok became obsessed with to a disturbing degree, and the sudden surge in the game's popularity completely buried Magical Deathpair. To be quite honest, I don't find Homicipher all that interesting outside of the novelty of trying to learn the language of the monster men. But Magical Deathpair, I will go to my grave believing this is the game that should have been the one that caught fire for Yatsunagi. I'm not going to go too deep into the meat of the plot. Magical Deathpair, should you decide to give this unfinished gem a playthrough, and you really should, is best experienced blind, because this ride is wild. Magical Deathpair takes place in a world where an organization exists that turns ordinary people into witches to fight monsters that secretly threaten the world. When you realize Vastine looks like a magical girl and her handler is a cute mascot-type character, you start to get a vibe closer to anime like Madoka Magica or Magical Girl Rising Project than a typical witch. A vibe that only gets stronger when Vastine gets drafted into a death game. Monopi, her mascot handler, tells her two powerful monsters have set up shop in an underground train station terminal and have slaughtered every operative sent in after them. The monsters, for reasons unknown, have proposed a game to give the witches a fair chance to stop them. But why would a monster want to fight fair? Vastine is ordered to join 11 other witches, but one of them is a monster in disguise, something she confirms when she finds the dismembered corpse of a witch on the train going into the danger zone, signaling one of her comrades has already been replaced by an imposter. The group will spend 8 hours together in the monster's lair trying to figure out who is the traitor among them. Then they vote for who they think is the most suspicious person, and whoever wins will be killed. And the game will repeat until the monsters are discovered or all the witches are dead. Everyone is assigned a partner, and Vastine is paired with Glassical, a suspicious and very forward man who seems to know way too much about Vastine for someone she just met. What unfolds next is a suspenseful dance of paranoia inside a pressure cooker that seems custom-made to push everyone to the edge, as Vastine tries to determine friend from foe while not ending up on the wrong side of the vote. Not an easy task, since Vastine has a personality that can best be described as difficult, and her cynicism and lack of regard for her teammates seems custom-made to get her voted off the island in short order. This tragically unfinished story had incredible Otome potential. Since we only got the first part, all we get are tasty hints at what's truly going on with very few real answers, but it points towards twisted relationships between the witches and bonds of love and loyalty that surpass time and death. I truly believe this could have been the masterpiece of dark romance fans wanting a true horror Otome hybrid game have been waiting for. After Yatsunagi finished work on Homicipher, they released Magical Deathpair's second episode, but any official plans to localize it seem to have been abandoned. I found a few posts on the Steam forums made by a fan who was working on an unofficial translation for the second part, but it's been close to a year since his last public update, so who knows if this project is still going forward. But I'm not sure the status of a fan translation on that second episode would really matter, because Magical Deathpair seems to have been abandoned by its creator. Yatsunagi announced in early 2026 they were leaving game development entirely. Apparently they'd been struggling with mental health for a while, and the final straw for the dev was Homicipher developing a rowdy English-speaking fandom that put too many demands on Yatsunagi. The sad thing is, I'm not sure things would have worked out any better had Magical Deathpair been the game that developed the obsessive fandom. Just that Yatsunagi would have been driven off by Bastine Glassical shippers instead of people who draw yassified Mr. Crawling fan art. But it won't stop me from appreciating the single episode we got and wishing the developer the best of luck on whatever comes next for them. We've just looked at something very dark, so let's cleanse our palate with something bright, cute, and fluffy. The Story of Eroolia is a series of 3 games from Team Roseverta, set in a kingdom divided between humans and the Lucretia, a race of humanoid cat people. This trilogy is a little messy, a little crazy, but totally adorable. I understand why these games might have slipped under the radar. The art is not particularly polished, there are no big-name voice actors attached to the project, and the games, while sweet and charming, are hardly groundbreaking. But it's still a shame that this series seems to have completely fallen off the fandom's radar, as I think fans of uplifting fantasy like Radiant Tale or quirky, feisty heroines would eat these games up with a spoon. The last time these games were even mentioned on the Otome Games subreddit was 3 years ago. The first game in the trilogy is How to Take Off Your Mask. It introduces us to Lilia and Ronin, our romantic couple. Lilia is slightly older than Ronin and acts like a big sister to him. In her eyes, he's a hapless boy failure who needs someone to keep him in line. One day, she encounters a strange black cat that talks to her, and this triggers her transformation into a Lucretia, a humanoid cat person. Come to find out, Lilia is half Lucretia and can switch between her human and cat girl forms whenever she sneezes. As a Lucretia, she's the size of a child and talks like a cat. Unfortunately, the Lucretia are widely hated by the human citizens of Eroolia and her neighbors, not realizing and probably not caring if they did, that the tiny cat girl they're persecuting is Lilia, the kind girl from the bakery. But a guy who looks a lot like Ronin steps in to protect her. And as it turns out, the mysterious hero is Ronin. The hapless boy next door has a whole secret job as a city guard on the side that she never knew about. Lilia, calling herself Leela while in cat form, gets to see a whole new side of Ronin, where he's mature and responsible and put together. Ronin has no idea Leela and Lilia are one and the same, and acts like a protective big brother to a little sister when he's around Leela. And Lilia starts to fall for this more mature version of him. As you might have guessed from no mention of other love interests, all the Eroolia games focus on one single couple. The games do have branching story paths that will take you to the same conclusion, but the story will take a slightly different road to get there. In How to Take Off Your Mask, you can choose either the human path or the Lucretia path. The route determines if the late-game romantic interactions will primarily happen with Lilia in either her adult human form or her catgirl persona, which, considering how young she looks as a Lucretia, is a choice. A very uncomfortable choice. The second game is my favorite of the trio. How to Fool a Liar King is about Regina, a girl from a faraway country who dresses like Little Red Riding Hood with cat ears. Without any warning or explanation, she's suddenly transported to a forest in Eroolia. Here she encounters Julie, a character we first meet in How to Take Off Your Mask. He and his entourage are on a very important diplomatic mission to Lars, the Lucretia city hidden somewhere deep in the woods, but he's willing to step in to protect a lost and helpless maiden. And Regina promptly punches him for that because she's a tough little firecracker with a mean right hook, and Julie is coming on way too strong for her tastes. Punching him out gets her hired on as a bodyguard, though. When they finally reach Lars, they're only admitted into the city because Miana, their bisexual catgirl princess, is the one who summoned Regina to Eroolia for the purpose of marrying her. Miana doesn't realize Regina's cat ears are just a hair ornament, and the bisexual catgirl princess is devastated to discover she's just been catfished by a fake catgirl. I never said insanity didn't lay underneath all that cuteness. From here on, the focus of the story is split between Regina's growing relationship to Julie and his attempts to negotiate with Miana. The Lucretia are naturally suspicious of humans, but Miana and Julie's fondness for Regina, combined with her outsider status, makes her the perfect person to act as a mediator between the two factions. While I love the push and pull between Regina and Julie, I do find their romance gets overwhelmed at times by the political plot about making peace with Lucretia, especially if your choices in the opening chapters put you on Regina's side of the story, as it focuses heavily on her friendship with Miana. Miana's a great character, and I adore her quirky mix of idiosyncratic chaos, authoritativeness, and dignity, but since Regina is not going to marry the bisexual catgirl princess, focusing on her so much feels like a waste of the runtime that could have been better spent building up her relationship with Julie. Miana, fortunately, gets her own time to shine in the final game of the trilogy, How to Sing to Open Your Heart. In this entry, Miana travels to Eroolia's royal capital to continue working toward the alliance forged at the end of the second entry. There she meets Ludovic, the king's unfriendly bodyguard, who publicly spurns the princess but slowly warms up to her once he hears Miana's beautiful singing voice. This game had so much going for it. By all rights, it should be my favorite of the three. I love Miana as a protagonist, and the Mr. Grumpy versus Miss Sunshine dynamic she has with Ludovic is just too cute. However, it's the weakest installment in my opinion. I tolerated the way the political subplot overwhelmed the romance in the back half of Liar King, but it's an even bigger element in this final game right from the start. I get that the development team wanted to wrap the saga up, but the plot is really not all that interesting, and I found myself beyond bored with it, to the point that I struggled to get through the second story path. What we get to see between Miana and Ludovic is great, but there's not enough of it compared to everything else going on in the story. And the elephant in the room is that by focusing so much on the fantasy racism of the humans toward the Lucretia, it drives home the story is grappling with themes that the writing team doesn't understand well enough to address in a credible way. Much of the central conflict between Miana and Ludovic stems from the fact that he's anti-Lucretia. As we find out, his feelings don't come from personal animosity against Miana's people. Rather, he sees driving the Lucretia out of the city as the best way to stop the anti-Lucretia hate groups from rioting and disrupting the peace. And the story treats Ludovic's feelings on the matter like a reasonable and more noble approach to managing the conflict than the gutter racism of the anti-Lucretia hate groups, which is a terrible approach to civil rights. People who are sensitive to these topics, especially when they're mishandled, should probably skip this entry. The final game on our tour is one that I played twice because there are two versions of it. The PG version on Steam and the filthy R18 version, which is only sold on one storefront that is now region locked for several parts of the world. For obvious reasons, I will be showing very little footage from the R18 version. I actually played this game many years ago and just forgot it even existed until I stumbled across the clean version on Steam. The memories came flooding back, and I was very curious what they could cut to make a build that could get on Steam and still have a coherent story, since the game's approach to romance focuses heavily on the physical side of love. Some of the routes are just off-the-wall filthy, and if you remove the H scenes, there's barely anything left, particularly Walter the Necromancer's route, which dips into so many bizarre fetishes, I think it pushed me into premature menopause. But I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. The way I'm about to describe the bell chimes for gold is going to make some of you very excited. Not only is this a steamy Otome game, provided you're playing the R18 version anyway, but it has actual gameplay. Maria is a talented herbalist who falls in love with the man she's been apprenticing under. Her potions command a high price and sell out as fast as she makes them. Maria's talents have earned her boyfriend a small fortune, under the assumption that they will use this nest egg to build a happy married life, but unfortunately her master has led her on and absconds with the money to marry his real sweetheart. A humiliated Maria now has a bit of a pickle. To make her potions to support herself and find a husband, she needs a steady supply of herbs and other materials. Her old boyfriend used to take care of that for her. Luckily, Maria encounters 5 broke-ass mercenaries that are all in their 50s and 60s to escort her into the dungeons where she can gather her materials. And they work for cheap because they're all losers. There's a drunk swordsman, a degenerate gambler thief, a snobby cleric, a pitifully naive elven ranger, and a necromancer who has so many issues I can't even decide which one is the most repulsive. That's right, not only do the love interests make up the typical D&D party roster, they're also senior citizens. This is an old man romance simulator. Truly, there's an Otome game for every taste. Old man Leon girlies, this one's for you. The RPG part plays a bit like a cross between a dungeon crawler and an atelier game. You enter the various dungeons, and the love interest acts as the muscle who fights the monsters. Maria acts as support, buffing and healing them with her potions, with the ultimate goal of managing resources well enough to take on the boss at the end of the dungeon for a hefty monetary reward. Back in town, Maria turns the materials she finds in the dungeons into potions she can sell for money or keep for the next run. The UI reminds me of one of those old Flash games you'd find on Newgrounds, as you only have the option to attack, use a potion, or the love interest special skill. And it's not a responsive interface either. I found that I often had to tap the buttons twice to get them to respond. There's no real exploration to speak of. The only way to go is forward. Money is central to progression. The love interests level up based on how much you give them for their services at the end of an expedition, and you unlock their story route by paying off their debts. Yep, not only are they crusty codgers, but they're also scrubs without a penny to their name. I told you this was a collection of weird games. But don't get too excited imagining that this is some incredible Otome JRPG hybrid. While you make a lot of fast cash in the early game, which lets you progress at a reasonable rate through the beginning episodes of each romance route, the process becomes incredibly grindy by the late game. You pay an ever-increasing amount of money to access the 7 story chapters that make up each route. To give you an example of how steep the literal price of love is here, you need to raise close to $250,000 in gold coins to unlock the final chapter of each route. Even if you follow the most lucrative strategy of heading into horde-infested areas to get double money on any monsters you take down, it's a repetitive slog to pay off those debts. The Bell Chimes for Gold was published back before Steam allowed adult content, and to get on that storefront, they had to practically make the Steam version a different game story-wise. I think the prologue and the first chapters of each character route are largely the same, but after that, each episode was either heavily or completely rewritten, changing the entire plot arc for some characters entirely. Brian the Cleric and Walter's routes were less of a trial for me in the Steam build, just because they're both gross and creepy in the R18 version. The adult stuff in their storylines involves consent that's dubious at best. I will be forever grateful that I didn't have to subject myself to Walter's pubic hair-eating slime and his, other unsanitary proclivities a second time. I told you it was filthy. Mind you, this doesn't mean these 2 routes are particularly good now, just that the gross H scenes are replaced with more conventional Otome romance fare. The revised chapters are noticeably shorter in the Steam port compared to the original R18 version, and the plots in the clean version boil down to Maria using her money to solve the boys' problems until they realize they love her and propose. It's very pat and uninteresting, especially since you have to work so hard to unlock the romance scenes. Not to say that the R18 version is a masterpiece that explores life and love through erotica, just that each scene feels like a lot more care and energy went into the writing. Even if I did not find that writing very appetizing a lot of the time, it's still clear to me that the developers had real passion for what they were making in the R18 version, and the build for Steam just doesn't have the same juice. At the end of the day, I'm not sure the differences between the versions matter all that much. The tedious, grindy JRPG mechanics are a big hurdle for enjoying it in my opinion. It's like I always say when the lack of gameplay elements in Otome games debate comes up, I would gladly take no gameplay over bad gameplay so we can focus on what really matters in these games, the story and the romance. And unfortunately, the Bell Chimes for Gold's RPG system is just not very good and gets in the way of romances that are average at best. And that concludes our journey through the weird and wild world of Japanese indie Otome games that flew under the radar. Hopefully I've piqued your interest enough that you'll try to track down some of these games so they're overlooked no more. If you enjoyed the safari through the obscure, please give this video a like and consider subscribing to the channel. I cover all kinds of fun topics related to Otome, romance, and girly pop gaming here at Otome Beat. Have you played any of these games? If so, drop me a comment and tell me if you loved it, hated it, or were indifferent to it. You can also tell me about your favorite weird little indie Otome game or Amare game that you wish more people knew about, even if it doesn't come from a Japanese developer. This has been Otome Beat. Thanks for watching.